All right, Jessica, thank you so much for being here today to talk all about food and sleep with our babies and toddlers and preschoolers and how it kind of all goes hand in hand together. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to be here. Again, my name is Jessica Gust. I'm a pediatric registered dietitian, and my company is called Element Nutrition Co. for Kids. You can connect with me on Instagram at elementnutrition.kids and also on Facebook. And essentially, I work with parents of kids of varying ages between primarily 1 and 10 years old. And some of the most common topics that I cover are things like starting solids, picky eating, particularly in those early years, and also on weight concerns. So a lot of parents have concerns with their kids' weight, whether they're underweight, overweight, and a lot of that is related to food and feeding as well. So those are some of the things that I commonly work with. However, I would say the topics can really vary. And I'm just really excited to be here today to talk about sleep and eating because I know that comes up a lot too.
Yes. And I just have to say, I love your Instagram feed. Like it
Thank you.
is so amazing. The content that you provide these parents. I mean, I wish when my oldest was a baby 9.5 years ago, that I was able to access this kind of information because you give your followers so much value. So before we go on, where can everyone find you on Instagram? Because it's an amazing account to follow.
Yeah, again, my Instagram account is at elementnutrition.kids.
Okay.
And you can find me either by
Fantastic.
searching that or
Awesome.
my name.
Amazing. And I'm so excited to have you here because, as you said, a question that parents are almost always asking me is, well, how do I know if my baby is waking up at night hungry? Does my 2-year-old still need to be eating at night? How much should they be eating during the day? If I introduce, solids early, is that going to help them sleep better at night? And, obviously it's one thing for it to come from me, but it's another thing to come from, a very qualified and experienced pediatric registered dietitian that can offer a ton more value and insight into these specific questions. So let's actually talk about the introducing solids question. So, or topic for that matter. I think that there is this widely held belief that if you introduce solids to your little ones earlier, or I guess as early as you physically can, that's what's recommended and that's what's going to help them sleep longer. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. When do you recommend that people introduce solids to their little ones, and do you find that it helps with sleep?
So the recommendations on starting solids, I actually follow the guidelines of the American Academy of Pediatrics and also the World Health Organization. They're two leading organizations that, govern the pediatric age for sure. And their recommendation is actually around 6 months of age. So that around kind of concept can be very confusing to parents. And so when I'm working with people, the way I describe that is they use around because not all babies are going to be ready at the same time. So you really want to look at their developmental milestones and how they are individually progressing. You don't want to start solids before 4 months of age. So the window is really 4 to 6 months, and some babies even a little bit after 6 months. For example, a baby born prematurely, you would use their corrected age. So if they're born a couple weeks early, then they may not be ready for solids. They're around 6 months is going to be a couple weeks later. So it really depends on when they were born, but also their developmental readiness. So you really want to look for your baby's cues and identify if they are showing the signs of readiness, because some will show that closer to 5 months, and some will show that much closer to 6 months, and some even a little bit after that. So I don't see a ton of babies showing the developmental readiness signs at the 4-month range, but I'm not going to say it's impossible. So at one time, they used to recommend starting solids super early, like way before 4 months. And we know now that introducing too early can actually be problematic for many reasons, but one, the baby's digestive tract just isn't quite ready yet. And then there's also some research that shows super early introduction may lead to weight issues later in life. So there's a lot of things around that topic as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When my mom was having, I don't even know why she ended up in the doctor's office with my younger sister, but I think it was just a regular checkup. So again, my younger sister's 31, so this was quite a while ago, and I think she was talking to the pediatrician about some sleep issues that she was having with her. She might have been, I think, 2 months or so, 2.5 months at the time, and the pediatrician, again, this is 31 years ago, told her to put rice cereal in the bottle.
Yeah. And
So
actually
you
that's
can
something parents are
guess
still
what
told.
that ended up, what the end result was there. The poor
Yeah.
baby screamed her brains off like the entire day until that rice cereal was digested. And of course, she never did it again. That's clearly indicative of a baby's digestive tract just not being ready for food.
Research has come a long way, and we can't blame our parents for what they didn't know at that time, but it's good that we have these guidelines too. So that around 6 months age is really kind of a key term. And then again, from there we can talk about developmental readiness, how to identify those signs, and that's really what I think parents need to know and pay attention to.
Right. So what are some of those signs that we
Yeah.
should be looking out for that our little ones are actually ready to start eating solids?
Yeah, there's a number of different signs. I feel some carry a little more weight than others, but a couple of the ones that you can look out for: baby picking up food with their, or sorry, not food, toys with their hands. So say they're blocks, they're able to pick them up and bring it to their mouth, or teething toys or anything like that, and they're able to really get that into their mouth with kind of that grab of their hand. The tongue thrust is another one. So babies have that kind of reflexive movement where their tongue goes in and out. So you kind of, if you're putting food towards your baby's mouth and they're pushing it out constantly with their tongue, that may be a sign that they're not quite ready yet. And then one of the most important ones that I encourage parents to look out for is baby's positioning. So you want them to be able to sit up mostly independently. You don't want your baby, like if you were to set your baby on the ground and they immediately just kind of flopped over, they couldn't hold their head up straight, that's going to be a sign that they're probably not ready, because if they can't keep their body upright with good alignment, that could increase risk for choking as well. So those are just a few of the things that we want to look out for. And of course, interest in food is important, but not the most important one, because babies can kind of seem like they're showing interest at an earlier age than really when they're ready.
Right. And I just want to assure people that if your little one takes a little bit longer to actually be ready to eat solids, that it's not going to be a reflection of how well they eat down the road. I mean, I can just tell you personally that honestly was my fear with my girls. They were both showing certain signs of readiness by about 5 months. And so I started introducing solids then. With my son, who's now 2, he was just not having it. He had that tongue thrust that just meant he wasn't, swallowing anything. And so I didn't really introduce it to him until he was about 6 months. He is by far my best eater. Like I tell you, this kid, he is the opposite of a picky eater. He is, he eats chicken, he eats meat, he eats eggs, he eats, cheese. His favorite food is broccoli and cauliflower. I kid you not. I actually have a video that I posted on Insta stories where he was holding a cake pop. He found it in the freezer, and I was just like, okay, it was after dinner already. I was like, okay, fine, you can eat the cake pop. But I had some leftover cauliflower, and he started pointing to it. And so I gave him the cauliflower, and he's holding the cake pop in one hand and he's putting the cauliflower in his mouth and then pointing to the cauliflower. He's like slowly but surely, learning how to talk. So I asked him, I said, JJ, do you want your cake pop or do you want more cauliflower? And he points to the cauliflower, that he wanted more. So that's just, some reassurance that, they can still become great eaters, even if they're not, at the front of the line in terms of actually being ready.
Yeah, babies have such great intuitive eating skills at that age, and it's not until kind of we as parents interfere with that can really kind of go down the wrong path. So it is amazing to see that, and I think a lot of parents experience their babies eating really well, and they're very open to new flavors and textures, and then over time, sometimes that it can change as you get into the kind of picky eating phase. But some kids really don't change. It just really depends on the child. Some really have a tough time as they get into those toddler age, and then some remain very good eaters. So I don't want to say it's the luck of the draw, but
So
it can be.
do you find that that introducing solids, you know, earlier than later, so you don't what kind of connection do you find, I guess, between, you know, introducing solids successfully and getting a proper night's sleep?
Well, initially, I don't really feel like solids has a ton to do with sleep, because when you're first starting solids, even in that, say you start in the 6-month range, the majority of your baby's nutrition in those first months are still going to be coming from either breast milk or formula. So
Hmm.
when you first start solids, the amount of solids that your baby is actually consuming is relatively small compared to the volume of nutrition that they're getting in a 24-hour period.
Right.
So, that's something I tell parents to keep in mind too. You don't have to stress if you go and start solids and your baby's not eating. Some people will be like, oh, they won't eat this whole jar of baby food. Or if they're doing baby-led weaning, they're like, I put all this food on their plate and they're not eating any of it. They're just spitting it all out. Well, most babies, when they're first starting, they're experimenting, they're learning their visuals, how to get the food to their mouth, how to move things around. So a lot of that kind of initial phase is a lot of experimentation, getting them comfortable, creating that really positive experience around the food, because over time, as they become more skilled, the volume will increase. And then naturally, as that volume increases, the closer they get to a year, more of their energy or their calories, their nutrition is going to be coming from solids and less from breast milk or formula. So I don't really feel that starting solids has a ton to do with how well they're sleeping. It's a very common myth that I think parents feel like, oh, it's time to start because then they'll start sleeping. And that's really just not the case, because when you think about the quantity they're actually eating at that initial phase anyway, it's just not substantial enough to affect sleep.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, listen, I completely 100% agree with you. You know, I can't tell you how often a parent will say to me, Eva, I would love to get my baby sleeping, but, you know, I just started introducing solids now at 6 months and she's barely eating anything. And so, you know, she must be waking up starving throughout the night. And so therefore, how can I possibly get her sleeping better if she's not eating solids well? And I agree with you completely that, you know, obviously down the road, which we'll talk about soon, they, you know, when they're not relying on breast milk and formula, and they are relying primarily on solid food for their calories, that's obviously one thing. But in these infancy months, milk, whether it's breast milk or formula, is still going to end up being the primary source of nutrition. So worrying about getting them an extra tablespoon of cereal in, or sweet potato, or whatever you're offering them, just really isn't something relevant to be worrying about. I agree with you completely.
And actually, there's some cases where it can be damaging, because parents are so concerned about the sleep aspect that they start being a little overly pushy with the food. And that actually could turn your baby off from food and then create more issues as you're progressing forward. So I talk with parents a lot about responsive feeding. And basically what that means is reading your baby's hunger and full cues. So, your babies are these amazing intuitive eaters. And then as parents, when we start to get involved by pushing them to eat more than maybe what they want, or by being overly aggressive with the one more bite or the spoon in their face, or, kind of pushing them to take extra bites, that can actually turn their intuitive eating ability around and kind of create a situation where you're overriding their own hunger full cues. So I actually encourage parents to be very mindful, if you are spoon feeding and you're presenting that food, let your baby lean into it, let them show you that they want more. If they purse their lips or turn their head, those are all signs that they're done. And that's your cue to stop, even if you're afraid, oh, if they don't take a couple more bites, they're not going to sleep tonight. And just know that the damage that could be done by over pushing food is actually worse than what could happen, with the sleep in your head, which again, they're not really even connected. So
Yeah. Yeah.
even
No,
though,
I mean, listen, I agree. You know, I always tell parents that, yeah, you know, babies and toddlers are inherently intuitive eaters, meaning, you know, they, as long as there is nothing physiological getting in the way, they know how to eat when they're hungry and they know how to stop when they are full. You know, it's quite a gift that I think a lot of us can, you know, learn to, learn to eat from. And so what I like to tell parents is something to remind them of is if your little one is eating a ton at night, then naturally they're not going to eat as much during the day. And so, one of the step that you might have to take, instead of just trying to get more food down during the day, is actually start, if your little one is ready, to reduce some of those nighttime calories so that they can start taking down more daytime calories. I don't know how often you see, that pattern when working with families as well, but I definitely see it. We refer to it as reverse cycling. I see that type of pattern all the time. And, it's like once we start reducing either some or all of those night feeds, depending on how old the baby is, all of a sudden baby is eating significantly more during the day as a result of not eating as much at night. It's quite a thing to see.
Yeah, I think from a nutrition perspective, generally, around that 6 months age, 6 to 9 months, your baby doesn't have a need to have overnight feeds. I think if you're feeding on demand and your baby wakes up, I always tell parents, do what works for you. But if parents are, obsessed with their sleep and, they're really wanting to get their baby sleeping more, then you're right. You want to work on reducing the night feeds. And a lot of that comes from, a lot of babies wake up, and this is more from my own experience, of course, too. I am not a sleep consultant, but when babies wake up, a lot of times they use either the bottle or the breast as kind of a comfort measure to put them back to sleep. So, I always tell parents, that's how working with a sleep consultant can really help you. They can teach you techniques to help your baby learn to fall asleep on their own without needing that bottle or breast as the comfort. And once that happens and they're sleeping more and able to self-soothe, then they're not going to be taking so much of that nutrition at night, and more of that's going to naturally be during the day. And then that's going to give you longer sleep stretches as well.
Yes. That's exactly what it is. People will tell me, but Eva, my 1-year-old is waking up and takes down 16 ounces of homogenized milk or formula at night. She must be hungry. And my response is, yeah, you're right. She absolutely is, because her body is used to taking down 16 ounces of milk at night. It doesn't mean that she has to be taking down those 16 ounces of milk. Can we transfer those calories from the nighttime to the daytime? 100%. And maybe it'll transfer in the form of milk. Maybe it'll transfer in the form of more solid food, considering it's a 1-year-old. That was just the example that I thought of, but let's even say it's an 8-month-old. Those calories, those ounces can absolutely just transfer to the daytime in the form of bigger daytime bottles. And then voila, your baby doesn't need to be waking up hungry at nighttime anymore. So I agree completely. But tell me this, when, let's say you have a baby that's been introduced to solids a few months ago, and it's still not going so smoothly. Let's say baby is 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, and, they're maybe just taking down a little bit here, a little bit there, but primarily still reliant on breast milk or formula for their calories. Are you a believer in, the whole food before one is just for fun type of thing? And do you just tell people, oh, don't worry about it because they're still under the 1 year of age? Or what are your thoughts on that scenario?
Well, I absolutely don't ever tell people not to worry about it, because it is a valid concern, and it is important to remember that food before one is for a lot more than just fun. So I don't like that term. I think most dietitians don't like that term.
Where does it come from? Do you have any idea, like, who came up with it?
I actually don't know the origin of the term. I probably should look into it, but it's one of those things that floats around and I hear it all the time.
Because it's got a good ring to it. And there's a few things in the sleep world that also has a good ring to it as well. Like, I know this is totally off topic, but there's this whole notion of putting your baby on a 2-3-4 nap schedule, like the 2-3-4 schedule. Literally every single sleep consultant is like, who came up with this? Because this is the worst. Like, this doesn't work for any baby. Like, it's awful. Don't do it. So yeah, I guess there's the same thing in the world of, food and dietetics as well. Like, where did this come from? So, okay. So for the record, you're not in agreement with that philosophy at all.
No, with a few exceptions. I mean, when babies are very first starting out, I don't want parents stressing about the volume that they're eating. But it is important to know that around that 6-month mark, there's a lot of nutrient needs that babies have that have a large increase. And so that's the purpose of complementary food. So complementary food complements the breast milk or formula that they're getting. So a couple of the, like zinc, for example, iron, those are some nutrients that jump up in the amount that a baby needs pretty significantly from when they're born until around that 6-month mark. And so, you know, we want to make sure that they are getting on track with increasing their solid food so that they can get those key nutrients that they need from food that's not going to be met as they age from just the formula or the breast milk alone. So that's the main reason why I don't like that term. And so when I'm working with families, if they're telling me that they're in that 9, 10, 11-month range and they've been introducing food for a while and they feel like it's not going well, I would recommend them seek the help of a pediatric dietitian who can kind of assess, because there could be other things going on. There could be oral motor issues, which may need the addressing of feeding therapy. There could be other things that maybe parents are doing that are kind of holding baby back that they don't even know is happening. And then we can also assess, you know, some parents feel like they're not eating enough, but they really are eating enough, and parents just don't think it's enough food because they have this idea in their head of how much their baby should be eating. So a dietitian can really help kind of assess how much they are eating, kind of what the day looks like, and also kind of help with that scheduling. Usually in that early phase, you know, we start with just 1 to maybe 2 feedings a day, and then the closer we move to 12 months, we'll get to a more consistent three meal schedule.
Right.
So, you know, there's a lot involved. And so if a parent told me that they were really struggling down the road between the 6 and 12-month range, I always encourage them to kind of get help sooner than later, because if you wait too long, then there could be some issues that, you know, maybe would have been better addressed sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I can't help but wonder if maybe that whole food before one was just for fun might have been created by a pediatric dietitian in response to all the babies that were introduced to rice cereal at, 3-4 months of age. And so maybe they just tried to swing the pendulum to the opposite end, saying, hey, don't worry about it. It's fine. Food before one is just for fun. Don't put so much pressure on yourselves, not realizing that it could be taken quite literally to mean that, oh, don't worry, if your kid isn't eating an ounce of solid food and they're 11 and a half months old, food before one is just for fun. So that's what I'm going to assume anyways, just, based on what you're sharing here. But tell me this, if by that age, we're not seeing much solid food being eaten, or if eating solids by that age range is a struggle, do you believe that can start to impact nights where maybe a 9-month-old who is ordinarily eating well would be able to go 11-12 hours straight? The other 9 or 10-month-olds might still need a night feed or two because they're not eating solids well?
It's possible, but what I would see more often is in babies that aren't doing a lot of solids is they're usually overcompensating with the volume of formula or breast milk that they're taking. And then what I've seen happen is they get more towards 12 months when, oftentimes if you're on formula, you're working on weaning off of formula and bottle. Breastfed mothers often continue past 12 months if they can and they want to. That's up to the individual. But what I find more often than not is if the food intake isn't gradually increasing and they're compensating with the calories from the formula and the breast milk, then it becomes harder in that weaning process. And then you're displacing food calories, food nutrients with the formula breast milk. And past one, that can be problematic because those things aren't going to meet their nutrition needs by themselves. And so if they're getting that large of a volume from formula changing over to cow's milk or continuing breast milk, depending on what the parent's doing, you can start to see some nutrient deficiencies. Particularly iron is a very common one that we see with high milk intake and low iron-rich food intake. So it can lead to other issues. And so that's kind of more what I see. I don't necessarily know that affects the sleep so much, because a lot of times they are still getting that energy. It's just coming from liquid energy. So I guess that would depend. If they were getting enough of that during the day, maybe sleep would be okay, maybe not.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it can really end up being a bit of a vicious cycle where, they're not eating as much solid food as they could or should be eating because they're taking down so much milk, whether it's breast milk or formula during the day, and then they're not hungry enough for the solids. And so you're saying in that scenario, then that hypothetical, very general scenario, part of the solution might be to decrease the milk intake so that they are hungry enough to actually show an interest in more solid food.
If we're talking about kids over 1, then yes, for sure.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely a
Yeah.
strategy I'm
Let's
working on.
backtrack for a second, because the breast milk versus formula, topic of conversation. I mean, I'm not going to get into the controversy of it because, I am a fed is best advocate. You are a fed is best advocate. I mean, oh my gosh, breastfeeding is wonderful. I breastfed 2 of my 3 kids, but you know what? For the other one, it didn't work. And when it doesn't work, it's terrible, awful, horrible. Don't do it. Right. Thank God for bottles and formula. But a really interesting dynamic I find, or belief, like widely held belief I find still exists with breastfeeding moms, is that the solution to their sleep woes is to get them onto formula, or to get their little ones drinking bottles, and then their sleep woes will blissfully disappear into thin air, and their little one will just sleep, 13 hours straight uninterrupted, and, we'll have world peace and everything will be wonderful. So, I'm wondering, like, when you hear, breastfeeding moms ask, saying like, oh, should I just get him onto a bottle and then he'll sleep better? I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I mean, let's think about for a second, formula was created to kind of mimic the nutrients in breast milk. So volume for volume, if a baby is getting essentially the same amount of formula as breast milk, there's not going to be a whole lot of difference there in the calories, the fat, all of that, because formula, again, was designed after breast milk.
Mm-hmm.
When that might not be the case is if a mom is breastfeeding, not using just breast milk in a bottle, but breastfeeding, and maybe baby has issues where they're not taking enough in, so they're not getting enough calories, and then they feel like going over to formula, they would know more how much they were getting, and they were getting more volume. That could potentially affect it, but it's not because of the formula, it's because of the volume being consumed there, if that makes sense. So I do believe it's a fairly big myth that switching from breast milk to formula is going to help the baby sleep. I think some parents believe that because that was their experience, which does not make their experience invalid, but that does not make the statement true.
Right.
So.
Right. No, I mean, listen, I agree. And, just for the record, half the families I work with, I kid you not, half, whether it's in, one-on-one consultations or in my sleep Bible program, are bottle feeding, formula feeding families. In other words, 50% of the time, when there are families struggling with sleep, their little ones are being fed via the bottle, because breastfeeding to sleep and bottle feeding to sleep both can cause the same type of issue. They both are, by definition, food sleep associations, where you are relying on feeding, whether it's by breast or by bottle, to fall asleep. And then there's technically nothing stopping the baby, whether it's the breastfeeding baby or the bottle fed baby, from waking up numerous times to feed back to sleep, because that is their crutch. That is how they fall asleep to begin with. And simply replacing the breast with the bottle really is like jumping from the fire into the frying pan here. And I think that the origin of that myth probably does come from the fact that in those first few weeks of life, it is objectively, and I can speak, from experience here, as, well as dealing with enough moms with even the newborns, objectively speaking, it is easier, and you probably do get longer stretches in those first few weeks of life when you're feeding a baby via bottle versus breast. And the reason for that is because babies in those first 6 weeks of life are going through multiple growth spurts. And so when a bottle fed baby is going through a growth spurt, and they're usually taking down 2 ounces in a bottle, and they're still hungry, what do? Added more milk. Done, right? You added more milk, they're full, everything is great. When you're breastfeeding, it can take your body 12 to 24 hours to catch up and start producing more milk to feed your baby. Milk supply is, I know that I'm not a lactation professional by any means, but, just generally speaking, I can tell you that every lactation professional will tell you that milk supply is based on when everything is physiologically working, it works on a demand supply basis. And so when your baby is demanding A, and again, your body is able to work and do what it needs to do, it will provide A. But then when baby starts demanding B, it's going to take your body a bit of time to go, oh, it needs more milk. Let me get on that. And so it can take a bit of time to then, reach that point. And so until that point, during that time period, you might feel like you're just constantly feeding this baby, and this baby is constantly waking up at night eating. And because there are multiple growth spurts happening in that time frame, it might feel like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to sleep. And if I were to just give my baby a bottle, I'll be able to get some sleep. And there is some truth to that. And I learned that because as I said, my first baby would not latch, did not nurse. And so 3 weeks on, I was done with the pumping, fed her bottles, never had to worry about that. With my second baby, on the other hand, it was like, oh my God, this kiddo was eating all the time. And it was this public health nurse that explained to me the first 6 weeks when you're nursing are going to be, more challenging, because you are going to find yourself, feeding more, and your body's going to take a little while to catch up to what she needs. But then by, 6 to 8 weeks and onwards, it kind of levels out to, the demands of bottle feeding. And then, they're both pretty darn equal in terms of how much they're taking down and how much they can possibly eat at one time. So that was my experience. And that's what I see as well with moms of, little ones across the board, that, for those first 6 weeks, it can be easier, but it's just for that one particular period. By the time your baby is 4-6 months and onwards, there is nothing superior in the sleep department about feeding a bottle versus feeding by the breast.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You would agree. And I'll tell you, I think maybe another thing is that a bottle-fed baby is capable of taking down more calories in one feed because they don't have to work as hard. So, I usually tell my breastfeeding moms, we probably need to be nursing your baby every, let's say, 2 to 3 hours, whereas a bottle-fed baby might need to eat every, let's say, 3 to 4 hours. But as you were saying, they're both going to be able to get the same volume of milk in each day, right? It just means that the bottle-fed baby that's taking down 6 ounces in one feed just doesn't need to eat as much as frequently. But the breastfed baby that's taking down 3 to 4 ounces in each feed can get that same amount of food, just needs to eat more often.
Yeah. And I think, the other thing that's just important to remember too with bottle feeding versus breastfeeding is, breastfeeding has the natural tendency for moms to obviously be very responsive, because you can't force your baby to take more from your breast than what they want to take, right? They're going to turn their head. They're not going to suck it. But, I have seen parents where they feel like their baby's not getting enough. So they'll kind of take that bottle and kind of keep pushing on it, or keep trying to get it, or kind of set it down and then go back to it instead of kind of really watching for those cues. So I think just like anything else, it's important to watch baby's cues. So you're not, I think bottle fed can tend to be more likely to overfeed or push more than what baby would naturally take with the breast, because you can't really do that with the breast very easily.
Yes. No, that's a really common question that I also get. Is it possible to overfeed a baby? And your answer is technically yes. With bottles, you can technically overfeed them.
Well, if you're not listening to their cues, your baby will not volunteer to overfeed itself.
Yeah.
But if you're forcing the bottle in their mouth and they're naturally kind of using it as they're learning that, oh, this is going in my mouth again and going in my mouth, I got to take more. They start to learn to take more than what they naturally would. So I would say inherently, no, you can't overfeed a baby, but you can push a baby to eat more if you're, not responding to their cues the right way.
Right. No, I love it. I'm so happy that we were able to tackle this topic, because it's a very, very common one that comes up. So there's nothing inherent. There's no sleepy dust in a bottle of formula, in other words. All right, so let's now move on and talk about the toddlers and the preschoolers. So, I know we were talking beforehand. One of your areas of specialty is picky eating, and that is a very intricate, detailed area to delve into. So we are not going to delve into that for the purposes of today, but people should definitely reach out to you if they are struggling with picky eating. But I guess here's my question, because this is a scenario that I see quite often. So you have a toddler or a preschooler who is not refusing to eat dinner, doesn't want to eat dinner, maybe had 2 bites and says, nah, I'm done. And then leaves the table, refuses to eat. And then suddenly, now that it's time to go to bed, oh my God, but mommy, I'm hungry, or they'll wake up an hour later, I'm hungry. And then you're thinking, oh my gosh, he only ate like two bites of his meatballs today. He must be starving. How am I supposed to just not feed him right now?
Mm-hmm.
And so, we see, and when I tell you, I've worked with families. I had a family where there was a 2-year-old that would wake up numerous times a night to eat a pouch of yogurt, like, those squeezy pouches. And the parents had to like keep the squeezy pouches right inside their nightstands so that when she woke up, it was like easily accessible. I had another family where the son would wake up every night at midnight and ask for a bagel, and he would eat, a bagel every night. And it's so common. And the root of the problem, or, the trigger for this was the fact that the child wasn't eating very well, or according to the parents, were not eating really well during the day. And so then, the guilt sets in, and they don't know how to say no to their, supposedly starving child at night. So I'm wondering, how you would address this type of scenario, what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, so I think there's kind of 2 parts to this. So you have the part A during the day, and the fact that they're not eating a whole lot, or that they're picky, and what their daytime feeding schedule looks like. And then you have problem B, which is them waking in the middle of the night. So you almost kind of have to address them separately, because most of the time, we all wake throughout the night. Our sleep cycle is a revolving cycle. And we have, ups and downs in there. But just because we kind of naturally wake a little bit doesn't mean that we're immediately like, I'm awake, I'm hungry, I need to eat, right? So usually we wake up for a little bit, and if we just can't fall back asleep and we're awake for a while, then we start to sometimes feel that hunger. But typically, we're not waking up because of hunger. There's something else waking us up, and then our inability to fall asleep might make us realize we're hungry. So I would say, as far as that nighttime sleep, that's where someone like you comes in to help parents with that sleep schedule, that sleep routine, what to do in the middle of the night. But then if they're consistently feeding, that's something that the kid is starting to expect, just like when you were bottle feeding or breastfeeding, and they were using that as a comfort mechanism to be able to fall back asleep. So you have kind of a 2-edged problem there. When you're talking about the parent guilt, as parents, we can feel guilty about a gajillion and one things. But if we can fix some of the daytime feeding issues, that sometimes will make parents have more peace of mind. And that's something that we do when I work with them, so that they don't have to feel that overnight, and they can focus on helping their kids get back to sleep without the food as the crutch. So, the sleep patterns are something, of course, that you would really be helpful with a sleep consultant, which can give parents techniques for how to get their kids to sleep without relying on food. But then the daytime feeding is important as well. So things that I would look at with a parent who this was happening is we would look at the daytime feeding schedule. What time is breakfast, lunch, dinner? Are they having snacks? Are they grazing all day? Something I see a lot is, especially in toddlers and preschool age, is the mom, I'm hungry, I want a snack, I want a snack, I want a snack, I want a snack. And they eat so many snacks, then they're not hungry for dinner, and then they don't eat the dinner. Mm-hmm. And then they're not having, enough there, and then that could potentially be affecting their hunger later at night. The other thing is, and I like to remind parents of this too, young kids tend to kind of front load their calories, so they tend to eat better earlier in the day and less at nighttime. So it's very common for dinner to be the worst meal of the day. But as parents, we put the most weight on that meal. We're making the new recipes at that time. We're cooking dinner. We expect kids to eat as a family. But let's think about what's happening for toddlers and preschoolers at the end of the day. You know, they've had their entire day before them where they've had to keep it together, whether they were at daycare or whether they were at school, or even if they were home with mom or dad, or whoever. And nighttime is when the meltdowns happen. They're exhausted emotionally, mentally. So it's really not the best time to try and get them eating something new or trying a new recipe or having super high expectations. So I like to remind parents that it's very normal for kids to eat more earlier in the day and less later in the day. And so just because they didn't eat a huge dinner does not mean that they need to eat more calories in the middle of the night, because their body can and has the capability of getting the nutrition it needs earlier in the day as well. So that's something that I think just ends up giving parents a little peace of mind that they don't have to stress about that.
Oh my God, Jessica, that's huge. I feel like for so many people listening, their mind just went like, oh my gosh, you know, hearing, wait, so my kid does not have to eat like his full bowl of spaghetti and meatballs and his potatoes and his broccoli and his this and his that to feel full. That, you know, dinner honestly is that meal that most kids don't eat as well. And I feel like that's a mind-blowing thing to hear, because that probably is what is triggering, you know, these last minute bedtime snacks and middle of the night snacks and whatnot. You know, I also tell parents, I tell them that, you know, especially for the kids who don't eat much at dinner, get tucked into bed, and then 5.5 seconds later are like, but I'm hungry. I tell the parents, you know, give them a 5-minute warning that the kitchen is closed. The kitchen is closing. So let's say dinner is 6 o'clock and it's now 6:30 and your kid's barely eaten anything. You know, tell them by 6:45 or 7 o'clock, give them a 5-minute warning that the kitchen is closing. Are you hungry? Do you want anything? No, you're good. Okay, turn off the lights. That's it. We're done. And then when you're tucking your kid in 20 minutes later and he's telling you that he's hungry, we have a boy who cried wolf scenario very, very clearly, because you did your due diligence. You did your job warning him, giving him all the opportunity to actually eat a proper meal. And then for him to suddenly realize 10 minutes later he's hungry, gonna call his bluff right there.
Yeah, I mean, the stall tactics are very common of the age in the toddler and preschooler, and that's what most of the time that is. And I love, I have a colleague who I learned the kitchen is closed statement from, and I like that as well. And I actually take it one step further than what you said, and I like to keep dinner at a fairly consistent time. So if dinner is at 6 o'clock, for a toddler and a preschooler, you know, it is very unlikely that they're going to sit in their seat and eat their dinner much longer than 10 to 15 minutes max.
Yeah.
And so I like to give a couple warnings there as well if they're just pushing things around on their plate. And once that's done, you know, I like to say, you know, if you're hungry, this is the time to eat dinner, because after dinner, we're going to start bedtime routine and we are not going to be eating again for the rest of the night. Are you sure that you don't want anything else? And then end it there. I don't even usually give that window all the way up until 6:45 or 7, because the more you give those windows, they will start to push those windows too. And I'm not a huge fan of bedtime snacks either. I mean, when you have a real young kid, and you're doing that transition from like formula to cow's milk, or even from breast milk to cow's milk, if that's what you're doing, and they're used to having like a before bed feeding of some kind, it's okay to be a little lenient there with that transition, and you know, keep a small cup or keep the dinner milk for a little later. But other than that, I'm not a huge bedtime snack fan, because what kids will do is naturally be like, ooh, bedtime snacks are usually better than my dinner. I'm going to not eat my dinner. I'm going to hold out for the bedtime snack. And so I, you know, obviously work with, depending on what the family is like and the child's, you know, it's a little bit different, but it's important not to kind of let the kids push the boundaries too much, because the more they push, the further those boundaries get spread apart.
Totally.
And yeah, I think it's important to be.
I love it. I love it. And, you know, and you're saying, like, because I'll tell you, another concern that some families will have is they'll say to me, oh, but Eva, my baby is really small, or my kid is really small. You know, she's in the he's in the 10th percentile, she's in the 15th percentile. What's your response when, parents are concerned about not giving a bedtime snack, not feeding repeatedly overnight because their little one is, on the shorter end or smaller end of the spectrum?
Yeah, I don't want to give a total blanket statement here because I have worked with some kids with some genuine medical and health issues where we've had to come up with a feeding plan that was different than what I would give the average family. But for the most part, being on the smaller end of the growth percentile isn't going to change the way that I recommend families approach feeding. And then the other thing to keep in mind too is there's some kids that are just naturally on the lower end, and being in the 5th or 10th percentile or 15th percentile by itself is not an issue. If we're seeing issues with growth where a child is, dropping percentiles, like they were 10th, 5th, 3rd, and they're down to like 1st percentile, or we're really concerned about weight, then we might have a very unique feeding situation there. But that's not the majority of kids. The majority of kids, even if they are lower percentile, tend to be very consistent along that percentile. So, if they're consistently growing along the 5th percentile, they're just smaller than other kids. I mean, it's not a problem. When
No.
it's a problem is when they're dropping percentiles or they're jumping rapidly percentiles, when those plateaus are happening. So they're kind of, their weight staying the same as they grow and nothing's changes, which naturally will cause the percentile to drop. So those are some more unique situations, which, it's hard to obviously delve into in a situation like this. But, if that is happening with somebody, then definitely working with a pediatric dietitian is important.
Right. No, that's what I tell people as well, that, if your baby is healthy, like their size is, genetics plays a huge role here, right? My middle child is, she's always been, since she was 4 months old, she's now 7. Since she was 4 months, she's been in the 10th percentile, like consistently, for height, for weight, like to this day, she's, a little cute peanut. She was like always takes pride in being the shortest kid in her class, but she was still sleeping through the night with one feed by the time she was 5-6 months. And I was still able to completely night wean her by the time she was 8 months. I'm 5'3", she might not even be 5'3". She might take after my mother-in-law who's 5 feet, and that's just, as I said, that's genetics, right? And I agree that it's not the size itself that's a concern. It's if my daughter was in the 75th percentile and dropped down to the 10th percentile, that's very, very different than being born 6 pounds, 13 ounces, and then dropping a little bit and then consistently staying in that growth curve, the entire time.
Absolutely.
So this was so fantastic. I am so happy that I was able to have you on my podcast, Jessica, because I feel like you were able to address so many very common questions and concerns and mindset challenges that a lot of parents have that keeps them stuck when it comes to tackling their little one's sleep. So I am so happy that you were able to come on. Where can anyone find you if they want to reach out, if they want more of you in their life? I know that you've got a, free download for everyone. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and where everyone can reach you?
Yeah, so they can reach me again on my Instagram at elementnutrition.kids. If you go to my profile, there's a link in there with a direct line to my resource page, which has some downloads. I also sent you over the link, so if you have show notes, you can put it in there and they can access it that way. I do have a couple separate downloads depending on what parents are looking for. So if they're in that starting solids range, I have a pretty nice starting solids guide that can get them started. And then I also have a separate one that is addressing more of the picky eating concerns. So we touched on both of those topics. So there's 2 different resources available that they can get there. And then through my website, which if you go to the resource page, you'll be on my website. You can go to the contact page, send me a message, schedule an appointment if you are interested in working one-on-one. And, I love connecting with people either by email or through Instagram as well. So whatever works for them is great for me.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much again. Thanks everyone for listening. Have a wonderful day.